Hi, I'm Crystal.
And I'm Karin. And you're listening to the Rom-Com Detectives.
Hey everyone, so welcome to Rom-Com Detectives, Episode 4, A Cunning Plan. This is the next episode in our Mentalist unit. Today, Karin and I will be talking about the third episode of the first season called Red Tide.
This episode originally aired on October 14th, 2008.
Okay, we're going to start off with a case briefing. This one takes place in Santa Marta, California, which is actually a made-up town for the show. There's no Santa Marta. There's one in Colombia, but there's none in California.
Interesting.
The title relevance of Red Tide is basically the victim was a surfer and she's found at the beach. She washes up on shore.
The cause of her death was a head wound and drowning, but it was not ocean water, it was ditch water.
And the motive was covering up an accidental death, but also jealousy and anger over the victim's desire to do the right thing. Guest stars, there are quite a few actually. Jamie McShane, I think he played the dad. Mr. Tanner, he's from Wednesday. He was on SEAL Team and The Lincoln Lawyer. Brando Eaton from Dexter and The Secret Life of the American Teenager. And then Brett Cullen, the guy who plays Dane Kurdick. I actually just watched him in Lost, and he was also on the Blacklist. If you're a Blacklist fan, he was the guy who played Ilya Koslov. And then he's also been on True Detective and Person of Interest and Narcos. So he's been in a lot of things. He's one of those, hey, it's that guy actors. Jane's skills in the episode. There's kind of a lot in these early episodes. He does item seeking. Yeah.
He just can't help showing off.
He does item seeking. He does hypnotism or fake hypnotism.
Right.
Cold reading. Sandcastle building. He is apparently a professional sandcastle builder. And this is the first episode we see him playing chess. Okay, moving into our episode breakdown. The episode starts with a girl finding the body on the beach, and then it moves to a kind of cute scene at the CBI, and Lisbon, Cho, and Rigsby, they're talking about the case. But meanwhile, Jane is holding Grace's hands, and they're moving around the bullpen. And he explains that he's going to try to find the van keys by reading her, and if he can find them, he gets to drive. Did you like the scene? I really enjoyed this one. It was a cute little team building kind of thing for like an early episode.
Yeah, and they find it interesting a lot in the first season. We get just these little moments where Jane's just showing off another mentalist skill.
Yeah, and at one point, Lisbon even says, "Oh, now you're a psychic."
Like, no, this is science. Promise, science.
But I mean, it was interesting to see like how Amanda Rigetti played it as Grace, like because her face twitches a little when he like motions toward the plant. And so those are the kinds of things. I don't think he says micro expressions. That's like a term that comes up later, but that's basically what he's doing, right? And I also wanted to note that Cho at this point isn't the stoic detective that we know. He's smiling a lot in this scene. He's actually grinning ear to ear when Jane finds the keys. The next scene isn't that important to the case, but I wanted to mention it because I had like a personal connection to it. They go to the beach and they show Christine's friends holding a memorial by throwing flower lace into the ocean. And as somebody who grew up in Hawaii, I was laughing pretty hard, even though this is supposed to be like a sad scene where they're saying goodbye to their friend, because they make a fairly big deal about their flower ceremony for Christine. And yet the lace are very clearly, at least to me, synthetic. And like I laughed even harder when one of the guys sniffed the flowers before he tossed his plastic trash into the sea. I mean, flowers don't crinkle when you take them off. I hope they pulled those out of the ocean before.
Yeah. I was also surprised how many people were at that ceremony.
I know, there were kind of a lot, yeah.
They focus on the teenagers, but there's a lot of people there.
Yeah. And Flipper is there too.
Yes.
But yeah, so Jane notices him, I guess, because he kind of stands out, right? He's wearing like cool sunglasses and his hair is different from typical people. But yeah, so on your first watch, what did you think about the questions that he was asking her friends? Because he kind of sounded random, right? He's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, if she was a color, what color would she be? And if she were an animal, what would she be?" Kind of thing.
Yeah, it just kinda came out of nowhere, and, the teenagers even question it, "What are these questions for?" And then Rigsby, I think, was like, "Yeah, what was that about?"
Yeah.
Um, and it's cool how they bring it back around at the end.
Yeah, yeah. Because yeah, we're just getting to know Jane at this point. So I remember during my first watch, I was like, "Why is he asking these things? This is a little strange." So after they talk to the teenagers, he decides to stay at the beach, and this becomes a recurring characteristic of Jane that he really loves the ocean and he likes the beach, and he always looks very much at peace whenever they go to the ocean, right? So they're establishing that about him. And I do want to note that this is actually the first episode with the rectangle logo. Like I guess 2 episodes before, they just had like the little bit of intro music, and then they had the definition of what a mentalist is. But this
Yeah.
one they had like the logo with the rectangle around it. So, and I think this is what they use for the whole first season, right? They don't bring in the blue and yellow one, the blue, white, and yellow one until season two.
I haven't looked that closely.
Oh, okay. I think it is season two. Like they revamped it for that. But okay, so Lisbon and Van Pelt go to see Christine's father. Christine is the victim. And so this scene is important because it does some Lisbon character building because he's got two young kids and Lisbon sees a bottle of liquor on the table and he starts telling them about how his wife was killed 5 years ago when a drunk teenager T-boned her car. And Lisbon kind of spaces out here.
Yeah, she gets this distant look on her face, and Van Pelt has to pick up the questioning.
Yeah, yeah. And they don't explain that at this point. She just looks very, very bothered. She's quiet and she's just staring off into the background. But yeah, so later on, though, when they're leaving the house, Grace mentions that Lisbon's mother was killed by a drunk driver, too. And oh my God, Lisbon doesn't react very well to
Oh
this.
my goodness, nope, and this is
She,
when we establish we do not do personal with this team. Just
yeah.
leave it alone. No, I do not want to talk about my dead mother.
I mean, do you think Grace was out of line here? I mean, she was just concerned for her, right? I mean, because she was visibly affected by what he had related to them. So
Oh, yeah, I think Van Pelt definitely had a reason to bring it up, but I wonder, like, how did she get this information in the
yeah,
first place?
yeah. Like, did she read Lisbon's file or something? I mean,
Right.
those must be, or maybe she just Googled her and there was like a newspaper article or something.
It was definitely awkward.
Yeah. And she looks like she knows that she messed up, right? She's like, oh, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, well, when you have your boss shooting eye daggers at you, then you kinda figure that out.
But I mean, at the same time, though, I mean, Lisbon had just fallen down the stairs too. Like she
Right.
was just so distracted that she didn't see that there were like a couple of stairs going down the patio, and she like fell on the ground, and I don't know, that looked kind of sore. So I don't know. I just feel like Grace was okay to be concerned about her. And I think Lisbon just bit back a little too hard just because she's new to the team and they're not very
Yep,
close yet, I don't think. Or, I mean, she's probably at this point supposed to be close to Cho and Rigsby, but Van Pelt is the new girl.
yep.
So she checks in with Cho and gives him some leads on the friends that the dad had given her. But I really liked when she asked where Jane is. He says he's still pursuing inquiries at the beach when really they just left him lying on the sand chilling, right?
Yep. He looked like he was gonna do some sunbathing.
But yeah, so really what he was doing was he was building a giant sandcastle to attract the attention of Flipper, the guy he noticed at the memorial. But oh my god, this guy Flipper, when they finally look him up, they mention that he got in trouble for assaulting a woman, and Rigsby calls it 100 stitches bad. I don't know if
Phew.
people know, but 100 stitches is a freaking big deal. He
Yeah.
he did he did serious damage to this woman, and Lisbon later says like, "Oh, you almost killed her." So he's Yeah, I was kind of bothered by something that Jean says later. But they get to Flipper's trailer and Jane is already there playing chess with him. They're all surprised, like, "What? How did he find him?" Because he wasn't around, right? When they were getting that name and looking him up and getting their warrant and everything. He was just chilling at the beach and playing
Right.
chess.
Yeah, right. So Jane noticed him in the crowd and knew he needed to talk to this guy, but he, of course, didn't share that with his team.
Yeah. But he explains it as because their hair was braided. His hair was braided the same way as the victims. But I found this scene really interesting to rewatch this time around because, I mean, Jane had just been really friendly with this guy. He was drinking beers with him. They were playing chess, and they seemed really friendly. And when the scene starts off in the interrogation room at the sheriff's office, Jane's demeanor is still pretty friendly. His shirt is untucked. He has his vest and shirt on. His vest is unbuttoned. And he's smiling and he's stretching and he looks very relaxed. But then, as Lisbon is laying out what he's done, that he assaults women, he likes to sleep with young girls, Jane is getting dressed. You can see him, like, while Lisbon is interrogating him, that he's pulling his sleeves down, he's buttoning his vest, he's tucking in his shirt, he's puts his jacket back on. And so by the time he sits down, he's all business already. Like, he's ready to see if this guy did anything serious. So, and he
Yep.
asks some pretty to the point questions. He asks, "Why'd you kill her?" And yeah, so
And I think it's worth noting that they had become such close friends so fast at the beach that Flipper called Patrick Trick, like,
uh
as a nickname. Like, they had
yeah.
Jane really he'd, picked him up real fast.
Yeah, so I mean, he tries to play good cop because the guy had called Lisbon bad cop, but he tells Flipper because Flipper doesn't want to tell them what he knows, and then so Jane tells him that he senses that deep down he's a good man, which I was kind of bothered by because, I mean, Lisbon had just talked about how he had beaten a woman nearly to death, and he basically talked about how he did that because she was polluting the ocean,
Right.
and I don't know. Maybe that's just my opinion, but that just seems like overkill.
Yeah, like, yeah, I can see that Jane's just trying to get him to loosen up, but yeah, it's
Yeah. But yeah, so he tells them about a party that her friends were having with her. And so that takes them to the next lead in they have to go talk to the kids. And they learn that they were all sleeping together and like or they call it hooking up. I don't know.
hooking up. Yeah, there's a big distinction there.
that, that was never a thing when I was a kid. I don't know
No,
about you.
nope.
I remember when I saw it, I reacted like Elizabeth and Jane did. I was like, "Oh, okay, is that what friends do?"
And there is I didn't put it in the deleted scenes because it's just a small extension of this scene as, there's just a couple of lines at the end of it where Jane and Lisbon are, like, hooking up. They're like, "Yep, times are changing, aren't they?"
All right, so they learn about where they were drinking and hanging out, and then that's when they go to the job site of one of the kids. His name is Danny. They go to the job site where his dad is building condos, and while Lisbon is talking to the site manager, Jane notices something sticking out of a cement foundation, and oh my god, I think this is actually the first time he yells Lisbon.
Yep.
But basically, he saw that there was a nose sticking out of the cement, which, oh my god, who thought of that
I
in the
mean,
writers' room, right?
and they squish the nose.
I know, oh my god, the site manager doesn't believe what it is, so he pokes it and he goes, "Oh!" And I reacted exactly the same way. I was like, "Oh, nasty." But yeah, so this is where we meet Danny's father, Dane Kurdick. He shows up and he becomes irate, and Lisbon can clearly see that he's an important man because I guess that guy is like name dropping and everything right there. So she knows that she has to tiptoe around him, even though he might be a suspect or anything. But Jane, he smells blood in the water.
Yep.
And this is where we get the first punch in the nose for Jane. And I remember when I saw this, I was like, "Oh, I thought it was a big deal." And then I had obviously had no idea this was going to become a recurring thing. But it's good for establishing Jane as, I don't know, what would you call it? pushy, too forward, too blunt.
And I gotta wonder because Lisbon, like he ticked all the boxes for a person of interest that they should
Yeah.
pull in, but Lisbon wasn't willing to do it. So I wonder how much Jane pushed so that he would get punched in the nose, so then Lisbon could
Yeah.
arrest him for assault.
Yeah.
But that was like it's the first punch in the nose, but it's also like you see blood. Like
Yeah,
Jane,
he gets a
he
bloody
didn't
nose.
he didn't pull away. He
Well,
Ugh.
I mean, to be fair, Jane was saying some pretty terrible things. He was calling him a sweaty little pervert and telling him that, oh, he was laying the victim like carpet. I was like, oh my
Ugh.
God. And he called him a filthy old goat. And yeah, so finally he punches him in the nose. And we had said that we were going to keep track of whether everyone who punches Jane is innocent. And with this first one, that does check out.
Sort
Sort
of.
of, right? He's not the killer, but he was sleeping with the victim. So,
Who was a minor.
yeah. Okay, so the next scene is back at the CBI, and Minelli is upset. He just basically gives Lisbon a very little leeway to question him, and it doesn't really work with him. Cho is interrogating him, and he's not really intimidated. But there's this really creepy scene after that when Kurtic goes, he like leans into Lisbon, like looming over her. It's like,
Oh, it's
ew.
so creepy.
I know, and he's like, if you were 15 years younger, I might give you a shot. And oh, that was
Ugh.
gross, super gross. But yeah, so Lisbon and Jane exchanged like a look here, right? It's kind of like a we're gonna get this guy on something kind of
Oh
look, right?
yeah. Ugh.
So by this time, Jane has his secret plan. He calls it his cunning plan. That's where we get our episode title from. But he has the kids all meet him at the beach, or no, it was at the job site. But he tells them something that I found really interesting. He wants to hypnotize them, and they're reluctant. They don't want him inside their head. But he tells them that you can't hypnotize someone against their will, and that they're in control the whole time. And I wasn't sure if this is true. I figured it must be if it's in the show, but I was it's TV, so at the same time,
Right.
can never be sure. So I did look it up, and I did find a hypnotism site that says that this is true, that you can't make someone do something that they're not actually willing to do, which I found really interesting. Did you know that? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'd heard it before. I think they do make a point of it at other times in the show as well. But this is the first time it's interesting how much hypnotism comes up in this first season.
Yeah. So he does like a group hypnotism. I'm making air quotes that nobody can see. So I'll just say I'm making air quotes. But he's like talking to them and pretending to hypnotize them, and then Hope like is the first to speak up, and she says that she saw Danny's father watching them, so that puts the suspicion on them. And so I guess what Jane was basically doing was trying to not plant, but get them to plant something, reverse plant. Get them to plan something with them. And so the next day, he's with Lisbon at the sheriff's department. He's pretending that on the count of three, one of the kids will walk in. And then not long after, Hope does come in and she's asking about the case, right? She wants to know if he confessed. And I guess that's just what he was counting on. So this is where Jane brings back the animal question. All right, he asks Hope, or he tells Hope that she's the hawk and Christine was the rabbit, and that kind of clued him in on her guilt, I guess, because she's the predator and Christine was the prey. And then that's when he tells her that he didn't actually hypnotize them, and so he knew that what she was saying was fake. So she faked her trance. I also wanted to note that he's wearing a really light gray suit in this scene, and I don't remember him wearing this one very often.
No, he starts to trend towards darker suits for sure.
Yeah. Earlier, he was wearing a medium gray suit with a dark blue vest, but yeah, this one was very light color,
Yeah.
almost like a off-white kind of
Yeah.
suit.
And he even like took his vest off at the beach. He was
Yeah.
totally out of uniform.
But yeah, so basically his plan works really well, and they all come in and they all start blaming it on each other, and like they get her confession first, and she blames it all on Danny, and then Danny comes in, he blames it on her, and then the other two friends come in and they blame it on Flipper.
It's so
It's just
funny.
a mess, right? But then Jane basically says that he knows that they all did it. Right? And they show like the flashback and how. But how do you think he figured out that Hope made all of them take part?
Yeah, I don't know because they even show the different accounts like it really happened. So when you come up
Yeah.
to Jane's account, then oh my goodness, it's so grim.
Yeah.
All these
Yeah.
kids just like taking out their
All holding
friends.
her down.
Yeah,
But it
yeah,
is
really
Danny who killed the guard, right? And they all say that that was an
correct.
accident.
Yeah,
They just
yeah,
wanted to hide that. That's the accidental death. But then they did murder their friend. So,
yeah. Because Christine wanted to come clean because it was an accidental death, and she didn't want that on her conscience, and yeah, it just gets really brutal from there.
yeah. But then Hope basically reveals that she did it because she was so upset by like her. Like she called her a hypocrite, right? She's saying that she was sleeping with Danny's dad, and so she was like hardly one to like talk about morals. But I don't know. I feel like it's just a selfish teenager kind of perspective from Hope, because there's a big difference between somebody dying and somebody like hiding that they're sleeping with someone's dad. I mean, one
Right.
one you just kind of move on and like later on you're like, oh, I can't believe I did that as a teenager, and the other one is, oh my god, I helped cover up a man's murder, or not murder but accident, a man's death, right? I mean, that there's a big difference to me in those two things.
And I think it comes down to Christine's background also because she came from, her family is less well off,
Yeah,
and she
yeah,
used to hang out with a girl who's now in juvie facing charges for something, and now she's come into this new group and sleeping with the boys when the boys used to sleep with Hope.
yeah,
It just gets so messy.
yeah. Their friend group is a hot mess. There's so many things wrong.
But they're really good surfers and they care for the environment. So
Yes, yes, except when they're throwing fake lays into the sea. Go pick those up, people. But yeah, so Danny's dad is arrested for statutory rape, which good.
very good.
And then the dad is there again and he's asking what he's going to get. And Lisbon is honest with him and says he probably won't serve time because Christine's dead. She can't testify against him, but that they'll have fun trying. But this is another good moment of character growth for Lisbon because she tells him that he has good kids and that he's all they have. And she admits to him that her father was a good man and that after her mother died, he became a drunk and he killed himself and he damn near killed her and her brothers too. But I don't know. Like, did she literally mean suicide or did she mean that he just basically drank himself to death?
Oh, that's a good question. I've always, when she refers to it at other times, I assume that he deliberately took his life at
Oh,
some
okay.
point, but it's open to interpretation.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I think Jane was listening, right? Because he wasn't that far away. He's always listening. So I don't know. He was standing. They nod. She nods to him, and he
Yeah.
nods back, and then he walks off. But yeah, I think he heard what she said, so he knows this about her now.
hmm There's also another point earlier that we didn't mention where Lisbon had to physically restrain the dad when
Yeah,
uh, when when Flipper was at the station, and she has to like raise her voice at him, and so she's has a lot of emotions in this
yeah,
episode.
yeah. That was the end of the episode. So we'll go into our cold reading. At what point do you think Jane cracked the case? Because I was thinking about this, and I'm not really sure.
Yeah, this one's tough. I mean, he keeps going back to those kids for sure.
Like, do you think it was when they were at the school interrogating them?
Could be if that's when he asked them what animals they were.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Definitely got into their psyche a little bit.
That put Hope on his radar, basically.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because Hope is like over the top, clearly orchestrating things with her friends.
hmm Yeah,
Um, but later, Danny also has that moment where he pretends to not know that Christine was sleeping with his dad,
yeah, yeah,
and which is totally convincing as well. So we know. that these kids can
Can
lie.
lie. Yeah. I mean, in general, I like this episode because I mean, the case itself wasn't that interesting to me, but I did really love the character building that it did for Lisbon, because it helped put like a different aspect of the way that she is. Because she's, like I said, we've been saying she's kind of brutal. I mean, she's kind of a hard ass with the team, especially with the scene with Van Pelt. But this gives some insight into why she's like that. She's probably hard because she had to be. So
Yeah, I agree.
okay, hot rating. Karen's gonna take us through this one. So
Okay, yep. We got a couple of scenes from the that were in the original script. The script was really close to what was aired this time around, but there's this particular scene after Jane pretends to hypnotize the kids on the beach. The kids all get mad at the end and walk away, and so Jane's left sitting there, and he's sitting there and he says, "You still there, Teresa?" And she comes out from the shadows because she was watching his back, and she says, "Of course. What would you do without an audience?" And Jane grins about that, and then she says, "Very cunning. Now what?" And Jane says, "Sometimes intense pressure solidifies a diamond, and sometimes it just smashes the rock into tiny pieces." And Lisbon says, "You could have just said, 'Now we wait.'"
but he's a showman, so
Absolutely. And then another thing to note was they originally had a closing scene. Jane would have been in that final scene that aired. He would have been in casual clothes. And then it transitions to him surfing at the beach.
that would have been
So,
really cool to see, actually.
yeah, it looks like they were actually going to take the footage from a show he did in 2006 that,
ah,
that they didn't air all the episodes. It got canceled after 3 episodes. So
ah.
they were gonna just take it from that. So they must have just run out of time in the episode.
It's worth noting too that Simon Baker is a surfer himself,
Oh, yes, very much so.
so I feel like that's a part of him that they put into his character, his love for the water.
Mhm.
Okay, rewatch checklist. Right now we only have Jismin moments that we're looking for, and the only one that I noted down was that when he's pointing out the security guard's nose in the foundation, he puts his hand on her back and he's like very touchy feely with her at this. And then the look that they exchange in the bullpen when the guy Kurtic is creepy with her. So
Yep.
favorite lines. I liked when Jane goes with Cho and Rigsby to the beach and Cho is still fixated on how he found the keys. And
Right.
he's asking him, "Did you have the keys the whole time?" And Jane says, "If I tell you how it's done, the magic circle will send a team of assassins and kill us all. It's the law." I love that bit.
I love how they gave that line to Cho, too, because it's usually Rigsby who wants to know how everything was done.
Yeah, yeah. Unless it's about witches, right?
Right. Ugh.
Okay, what is your favorite line?
So I didn't write down a particular line, but it's related to when Jane has to call Lisbon's name for the first time.
Yeah.
Lisbon! With back to the nose scene. I love how they play that, how, the touchy-feely part, but it's, how he directs her to his line of sight. And then after they determine that there's a person buried in this concrete, they show them like they chipped out the person
Oh
shape
yeah,
of the
in a
concrete and they're moving it.
I saw that too.
I'm like, it didn't look like it was a very big section of concrete in the first
Yeah,
place, but yeah, this had to cut out the person shape.
yeah, that was amusing. Can you imagine that the prop department had to go literally make like a person-shaped block of concrete to like show them lifting a crane out? All right, so we have a new Memory Palace quiz for you all this week. And you can check out our Instagram account for a bonus question that we're going to post on Sunday. But basically, the way this is going to work is I will ask 5 questions of increasing difficulty about the episode we just discussed, and you'll have 5 seconds to come up with an answer. And I'm going to be giving these questions to Karin. She does not know the questions, so she's going to be taking the quiz with you, and we'll see how good her Memory Palace is. Okay, first question. How many siblings does the victim Christine Tanner have?
2.
Correct. Question 2. What does Jane do to fake hypnotize the kids?
He has a bonfire going, so they're looking into the fire, and then he kind of taps on his leg while he's walking behind them with his soothing voice.
And by the way, I bought that. I thought he was hypnotizing them.
Well, it would have worked for you, right?
Yes, exactly. I don't know what I would have said, but question 3. Where was Jane while Van Pelt hid the car keys?
In the men's room,
Yeah,
which is
very good.
such an awkward line, though.
Yeah.
You saw her hide the keys from the men's room? I don't think so.
But actually, like, it's possible that he could have read. Isn't the men's room right down the hall? He could have been peeking out the door. Okay, question 4. How old was the victim, Christine Tanner?
15.
Ooh, very good. Okay, last one is the hardest one. Question 5. What is Flipper's real name? Can just get first
Oh,
name or, yeah, first name's fine.
I totally glossed over that part, and then I kept writing Flipper in my notes. Starts with an H.
His last name starts with an H. His full name is Philip Handler. Like I said, we're gonna post a bonus question on our Instagram account so you can go see what that one is and see if you can get that one too. And that's it for our episode. Any final thoughts, Karin?
So I always think of this episode as a filler episode.
Yeah.
You know, I don't love the case, but even in all these, you get such great moments like Jane building the sandcastle and getting to know Lisbon better in this one. And I think you can really see how Jane and Lisbon start working together in this one.
Mm-hmm.
How they behave more like friends in this episode.
Yeah. Although she does roll her eyes at him.
Yes.
Because like last episode, he did the thing where he like makes a phone call while she listens, and she's like super irritated. And they did the exact same thing this time because he's calling the kids, setting everything up, and she's just behind him like, "Oh God, what?" Because he had told her, "Oh, we're gonna execute my cunning plan now," and she's just like, "What cunning plan?" Yep, so that's about it. If you're enjoying Rom-Com Detectives, be sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on Spotify, you can comment on the episode and tell us if you would have punched Jane in Dane Curtick's shoes if he had said those things to you. Because, I mean, punching someone in the nose is kind of a big deal, especially if you get arrested for it. If you'd like to join additional conversations about The Mentalist, you can visit the Mentalist subreddit at reddit.com/r/The Mentalist, and you can join the Mentalist Bullpen Discord server linked in the sidebar. To contact me and Karin, email us at host@romcomdetectives.com. You can follow us on Instagram at romcomdetectives, or leave us a voicemail or text message at 1-650-733-XOXO or 9696. This episode of Rom-Com Detectives was recorded on March 6, 2025. Rom-Com Detectives Mentalist Unit is co-hosted by Crystal Watanabe and Karin Lubbers and is produced by Pico's House. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
See you next time.